So just to start, can you take us through what your deliberations were like, whether to play this year or not? What was most important when you came here to kind of see and feel, and how you feel about everything going forward?
So my wife's been public about her health. I don't necessarily think that should be a requirement for people to disclose as they're continuing to try to make these decisions for what's best for them and their family. But that was something she chose to do, to kind of shine a light on what a lot of players are struggling with right now. What it came down to for us, we were able to find a way where I think she's going to be able to stay with some family that's in the area, just so she's close. We didn't want anything to happen and have her be half the country away from where I'm at right now. So she's close enough where that if something happens, if I get sick, even though she can't be with me because she's high risk, obviously, that she'll be able to help in some way, bring groceries or I don't know, stop by the house and make sure I have everything I need, something like that. From that standpoint, we're feeling a little bit better about it. But I don't know. So far, we're only, 3 days into this? So far, our staff, our medical staff has been doing an incredible job. I think it's running as smoothly as it can at this point. But like a lot of players, the opt-out provisions aren't great. They're not great. There's a lot of players right now that are trying to make decisions that might, be participating in camp that aren't 100% comfortable with where things are at right now. And that's kind of where I am. I think I'm planning on playing, but if at any point I start to feel unsafe, if it starts to take a toll on my mental health, with all these things that we have to worry about and just kind of this cloud of uncertainty hanging over everything, then I'll opt out. But, for now, I've prepared for the last 3 months like I'm going to play. I feel ready to go. But, as I sit here talking to you guys, let me check something. Yeah, as I sit here talking to you guys, I still don't have my test results from Friday's test. So, I got tested again this morning without knowing the results of my test from Friday. So, we got to clean that up, right? So, that's one thing that, makes me a little nervous.
Next up, Mark Zuckerman, MASNsports.com.
Hey, Sean, can you spent the last several weeks kind of hearing what the protocols were going to be like, but now that you're actually here and seeing them in practice, how does it match up with what your expectations were? And does it make you feel more secure, less secure? Now that it's actually in practice, how has it felt to you?
It's felt, to be honest, it's felt I think as good as we could have hoped for, as far as the way the structure of the days have been set up. I think our coaching staff and our medical staff have done a great job of coming up with the schedule that really I was about to yell at that person for knocking on the window, but it's Mike Rizzo, so I'm not going to say anything. But I think our staff and our coaches have done an awesome job of coming up with a schedule that really factors in distancing. There's not a lot of there's no overlap at all with anybody except the people that you need to be around in order to play catch with somebody or something like that. everybody's got their masks on in the clubhouse. The only time guys don't have their masks on is when they're on the field. And even then, there's a lot of guys wearing their masks still outside. So I think just from a daily standpoint, like I said, I think our medical staff is doing everything that you can do, to try to mitigate the risk as much as possible at this point. So that's been good to see. They've done a great job so far.
Next up, Jesse Doherty, Washington Post.
Hey, Sean, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Just quick clarification. You mentioned not having test results yet from Friday. There was an intake screening process you guys went through. Is that Friday test part of the every other day model now,
Yeah.
beyond the intake? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So then you tested today as every other day, essentially.
Yeah. So Wednesday was intake, and then starting Friday was the beginning of our every other day testing. So, we got to clean that up, because even the intake tests, there were clubs that couldn't work out as a team on Friday because they were still waiting for their results. We got our results at like 3 a.m. So we all just kind of set our alarms to, and then we all like got our the notification when we woke up, and we were like, oh, okay, we do have practice. Well, we went to sleep that night not knowing, on Thursday night, not knowing if we were going to have practice the next day, because we didn't know if our results would be in time. And there were a few teams that their results didn't come back, and so they lost a day. And when spring training is only 3 weeks long, you got to have those days. You need every day to try to get ready for the season. So as the season moves forward, as we continue spring training, especially once we start traveling, those results got to be back. That's one of the biggest things that there were a lot of guys that are on the fence that decided to try to play to see how this was going to go, because we were going to have our results within 48 hours. So hopefully that's something that we can address and improve moving forward.
Jesse,
You mentioned, yeah, I do. When you looked at your phone, frankly, I expected you to be maybe looking for some sort of push notification news update. Obviously, you're looking at your testing results, but when you're someone who's very plugged into this, all players are. When you're seeing constant updates of this team's had 5 players test positive, this player opts out, what's it like right now to be bouncing, playing baseball, going out there on the mound and throwing, while also being part of a sport right now that's sort of inundated with updates that are frankly really scary? I mean, just how are you balancing that? You mentioned the mental toll, but just what's that been like in these first couple of days?
It's been weird, man. It's been really weird. And that's like one thing, like I touched on it earlier, but like my mental health is something that I'm really going to have to stay on top of. Like I can already tell this is going to be a grind mentally, and I might go crazy before anything else. Just with this, like I said, there's this cloud of uncertainty. There's this kind of, you're always kind of waiting for like more bad news. Like every time I get a text message or something on my phone throughout the day, I'm worried that it's either going to be some kind of bad news, like somebody in the league tested positive, or somebody opted out, or so-and-so broke protocol, and there's pictures of people going out on social media when they shouldn't be. Like there's all these things, and then just the regular procedures of the day. Like it's a lot. It's very, very different. And unfortunately, there's not a long period of adjustments, and there's not a lot of room for error. So I don't know. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
He's on mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah, that did. Thank you.
Next up, Adam Zlanka, Washington Times.
Hi, thanks. I'm muted. Good. Sean, just to go off of a question Mark asked a minute ago, in the last several days that you've been around here, what has been the strangest or most irregular kind of protocol that I might still be hard to get used to? I think yesterday Max mentioned like the bottled water isn't even in fridges, and obviously you can't, lick your hand when you're getting ready to pitch. And Max was saying, well, he has to just sweat off his hair now. What has been weird or abnormal for you, just from the baseball perspective?
I don't know. I'm pretty low maintenance, so not a lot of it has has come into play for me yet. I was never a guy that licked my fingers. I'm not a spitter. So neither of those things really like affect me one way or another. So like I don't have anything yet that's been weird. Just trying to monitor. I'm a big fist bump guy. Like I like to say thank you to my catcher after he's caught my bullpen session, or my throwing partner after we. So like just interacting with people throughout the day. I think I don't know. It's just different. I feel like those are maybe some of the easier adjustments that we're gonna have to make, but I don't really have anything that's been too weird, at least in my experience to this point.
Next up, Brittany Giroli from The Athletic.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So I'm curious, just to switch gears here a little bit. You and your wife were really active in kind of attending a lot of the Black Lives Matter rallies, and you've been very outspoken in the past. And I'm wondering what your reaction was to reading that post from Ian Desmond, and whether you think there is a cultural problem at large in MLB.
I thought the post was incredible. And I mean, I read it over and over again a few times, and for him to put himself out there like that and make himself a little bit vulnerable by speaking his truth like that, I have so much respect for that. And even though I never played with him while he was here, I've heard so many good stories about what an incredible presence he was in the clubhouse, what a great teammate he was, what he meant to the community here. I've heard so many amazing stories about his work with the Nats Youth Baseball Academy. So I've always had respect for him, but that was incredibly powerful to hear a player in our league speak about those issues and what his experience has been with them, what he's seen with his own eyes, and what his experience has really been. That takes a lot of courage to speak truth to power like that. I mean, I thought it was incredibly well done and incredibly powerful, and I respect him and support his decision 100%. As far as baseball having a cultural problem, that might be tough for me to answer as a white dude. I think it's something, like I want to say no, but like there are guys like Ian Desmond. I don't know if you guys heard that podcast that CC did, CC Sabathia did with Chris Young and Cameron Maven and Edwin Jackson. There are guys who are sharing these experiences that are saying like, no, this stuff is happening in clubhouses. So like for me to say like, I don't think so. Like, I think it's actually okay when there's people that are shining a light on this and speaking from experience. Like maybe we do have to look in the mirror. Like we have to like shut up and listen and figure out a way to address these issues, be better teammates, be better human beings. There seem to be a lot of instances where it's not it might not be like the overt in your face racism where you're hearing racial slurs and stuff like that, but it might be something that's a little bit more subtle, that's a little bit more I don't know, like something that people don't necessarily realize that it's whatever they're saying is ingrained in racism, and that it's like something that's a little bit more subtle. There's a lot of that stuff that I think we can clean up if we're really serious about moving the game forward and making our locker rooms better, more inclusive places for all of our teammates.
Next up, Jess Camerato, MLB.com.
Hey, Sean. Jesse had asked you about balancing everything. And thinking back to the delay before you got back to summer camp, how did you balance getting ready for baseball, making sure that everything was okay with your wife's living situation, and then also being involved in social issues? It was like you had so much, I guess I would call it real life stuff going on outside just the sport.
Well, in a way, like it kept us busy. It made us feel like we still had a purpose. Like even though baseball wasn't happening, um, there's still really important things that we wanted to be involved in, that we wanted to help with. And I've never wanted my entire identity to be wrapped up in baseball. Of course, I miss it when it wasn't happening, and it definitely was weird having free time at home during the summer months. But I think I wanted to use the time to, obviously I was staying ready every morning. I worked out for like 2 or 3 hours at the house. I got really into road biking and cycling, so I was like staying in shape. That was kind of some of the only times I left the house, really. Was to hop on a bike. I was doing 30-mile rides like 3 or 4 times a week. So I lost a bunch of weight. I feel like I got in pretty good shape. I'm not going to say I'm in the best shape of my life, because as a 33-year-old, that ship sailed a long time ago. But like, I think like I was doing, I had a net in my side yard that I was getting a throwing program in. I would do 3 or 4 days in a row and then take one day off. So I was still very much doing the baseball stuff, but like at the same time, there were other things that are happening in the world that like I wanted to be involved in. Like, this is our generation's civil rights movement. There's never been a better time or a more important time to get involved, and to help raise the voices of people who are trying to bring attention to some of these issues and share their experiences, and go to um, go to a public demonstration, get involved, whether it's with your voice or with your wallet. We're in a position where we could help a little bit financially with some of these causes. So like, I still feel like we still felt like we had a purpose, and that there was something important that we were doing. So that definitely, I think, kept us from being bored and missing baseball. There's more important things than baseball, but that's my job. So I was staying ready.
Next up, Maria Guardado from MLB.com.
Hey, Sean. We obviously saw a lot of players and coaches, executives kind of speak out on systemic racism and social justice and things like that. I mean, how do you think we can kind of keep those conversations going now that baseball's back? And do you think that we might see more activism from players moving forward?
I hope so. I hope we see more activism from players moving forward. It seems like we will. I've been really proud to stand with some of these guys in our league who have been speaking out on these issues, the issues of race and racism, especially over the past couple months. And I think I saw, trying to remember who it was. I can't remember if it was Jack Flaherty or Amir Garrett. You guys can double check that for me, but they said, just because we're back playing baseball doesn't mean these conversations are going to stop. Doesn't mean we're going to stop bringing attention to these issues. And I think this is where we're still trying to come to grips with where baseball fits in, American society in 2020. Is it just a distraction? Is this like some ancient Rome bread and circuses stuff where we're just like appeasing the masses and giving them a distraction from everything else that's going on in the world, all the bad things that are going on in the world? Or can we be a productive part of the discussion about ending racism and promoting equality and justice for everybody. I think we've seen, I think we've reached a tipping point where over the last couple of months, guys have kind of found their voice. They've been maybe more active on social media than they have been throughout their career, and they've gotten a little bit more comfortable putting themselves out there. They've found some support from other players around the league. So I think it's all culminated in and there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to continue these conversations. And like I said before, I'm proud to stand with those guys and try to amplify their voices and echo their message.
All right, we have time for two more. The first will be from Jesse Doherty, Washington Post.
Hey, Sean, this may be like a bit in the weeds, but during negotiations, owners had kind of restarted things when they suggested that they agreed to the original deal under the pretense there would be no fans. We've now seen in recent days owners starting to say that they could see fans in parks in 2020. They are hoping to have them. As someone was part of those negotiations, how does that sit with you? That something that maybe seemed to be a linchpin in the middle is now being brought back up and maybe reframed.
Can you tell I'm smiling? Can you tell I'm smiling under my mask?
I can't, but we'll put that on the record that you smiled.
You know what? I'm going to dance around that question a little bit.
Okay.
Just because there's still a lot of moving pieces behind the scenes. But I don't think any of us were necessarily surprised by that. But I do think it does like bring to mind kind of where we're at in our response to this as a country. Like, we're trying to bring baseball back during a pandemic that's killed 130,000 people. We're way worse off as a country than where we were in March when we shut this thing down. And like, look at where other developed countries are in their response to this. We haven't done any of the things that other countries have done to bring sports back. Sports are like the reward of a functioning society, a functional society. And we're just like trying to just bring it back, even though we've taken none of the steps to have it to flatten the curve, or whatever you want to say. We did flatten the curve for a little bit, but we didn't use that time to do anything productive. We just opened back up for Memorial Day. We decided we're done with it. Like, if there aren't sports, it's going to be because people are not wearing masks, because the response to this has been so politicized. Like, we need help from the general public. If they want to watch baseball, like, please wear a mask, like, social distance, keep washing your hands. Like, we can't just have virus fatigue and think it's been 4 months, like, we're over it. This has been enough time, right? We've waited long enough. Like, shouldn't sports come back now? No, there's things we have to do in order to bring the stuff back. So, like, and now you want to bring fans back? I mean, I don't know. Is that safe? I'm not a public health expert, but like, we should probably defer to them on some of these issues. So I don't know. I don't know if it's safe or not. I really don't know. But like, that doesn't seem like something that, I don't know if that feels like a good idea or not. I don't know.
All right, our final question will be from Todd Dybus, NBC Sports Washington.
And Sean, like Jesse just alluded to, I kind of want to ask you about negotiations and your view of the 3 months after the original agreement, which ended up being what you guys are doing in the end anyway. And there's all public back and forth in the middle of a pandemic and the social unrest that you mentioned. And meanwhile, baseball was just arguing within itself the entire time. Kind of what was your feeling while that was going on, and ultimately what was your feeling on what was landed on at the end?
It was awful. It was awful. I hated it. Unfortunately, we were put in a position where we had to hold our ground and not get taken advantage of. But the fact that it felt like the conversation shifted from being about, okay, what's it going to take for us to do this from a health and safety standpoint. The conversation should have been the focus all along. how are we going to keep these people safe, and not just the players, the staff and all the auxiliary workers that it takes to put a baseball season on. And that should have been the focus. Instead, the focus was trying to jam in a new salary structure in the middle of a pandemic and start and try to change a bunch of the rules, stuff they've wanted to do all along in like a 2-month window during a pandemic. So it's like the whole thing, it felt tone deaf. It felt gross. I'm proud of our solidarity. I'm proud of the way players held the line and didn't give in. And in the end, we ended up with a deal that is we ended up with a situation that is pretty much what the March agreement was setting up the entire time. So like, it feels like we could have done this without spilling all this bad blood and airing all these public grievances. But I don't know. Again, I still think that because of the way the conversation shifted to be about the economics and the business aspect of this, that the health and safety protocols kind of took a back seat. And then, all of a sudden they were like, all right, July 1st, let's go. But like, I don't know how much they coordinated with our staff, and they're kind of like, it's a little bit disorganized. We're not getting tests back in time. They still haven't sent us the PPE. We're supposed to have N95 masks, stuff like that, gowns, gloves. We're supposed to have that stuff. We don't have that stuff. So those are the things it's going to take for people to stay safe enough for us to continue the season. So I really wish the focus was more on the health and safety protocols, and maybe we could have avoided a lot of that mess.